show on Building Fortunes Radio with your host, motivational speaker Greg Dwyer. Be sure to check out Greg at www.gregdwyer.com. That's www.gregdwyer.com. Now on to our show. Take it away, Greg.
Okay, we are back. We're looking at some letters in the word diamond and mine. So a couple weeks ago we looked at the letter D, decide, and I talked about what's the metaphor that you have for life. Decide how you see the world. For me, it's I see the world as a game. I see the world in the sense that people win, people lose, some people cheat, some people play authentically, but nevertheless, I see the world as a game. I also see it as a journey. I also see it as a stage. We all see the world differently. You know, I mentioned how my father saw the world, how I see the world differently, and I'm sure you have your way of seeing the world in your metaphor. After that, we talked about decide where you are as far as your worldview, and also where you are in certain categories, whether it be the business or professional life, or whether it would be in your personal life. So you got professional and personal. We're going to talk today about the letter A, which is aim. So what are we going to aim for? Well, as we talked last week, you got to know what is important. This is values. Now everybody talks about goals. You know, you got to have goals. New Year's Eve resolutions and goals. Some people, they don't even have goals. They're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to write things down. Nothing ever comes true. I think what's better than goals is what is it that you value? What is it that is important to you? And you might say, I don't know. Well, you do know. If you think about it, it's probably your health, or it's your family, or it's freedom, or something like that. So knowing what's important to you is really, truly important. And then you're going to aim towards it. You're going to aim towards making it happen. So when I think of the word aim, I think of a target. You know, you have maybe a bow and arrow, and you're focusing towards that bullseye, and you're going to aim towards it to make it happen. Now, here's one of the things that I think that does get in the way. It's this idea that I have all the time in the world. All the time in the world. I'll get around to that tomorrow. Or, yeah, someday I will do that. And I think this is the biggest enemy towards aiming. It's this lie that, and I've done it, I'm sure you've done it too. It's this lie that says, tomorrow I'll do it. And we know from the movie Groundhog Day, and just because of reality, tomorrow never comes. The only thing you have is now. Right now, that's it. That's all you have. So when you keep on pushing it off to the future, I got to tell you a funny story. About 4 days ago, I'm outside, I'm cutting my lawn here in Connecticut, and I look up at my trees. Now I have a tree on the left of my house, and it's overgrown on the second floor of the roof. And I'm like, you know, I got to do something about this. And I said that before. In fact, I said that last year. And then there's another tree over my driveway. I should trim that back. And I'm thinking to myself, I'll probably get up there one of these days and I'll do it, you know. And this was my dialogue in my head. And I thought, well, maybe I'll do it in the fall. You know, the leaves will be off the tree. Right now, as I'm recording this, it's towards the end of July. I'm thinking, well, maybe when the leaves fall, that's when I'll do it, because it'll be a lot easier. So the next day, and I kid you not, I can't make this up. The next day, across the street, in fact, it's straight over there, my neighbor had some work done, guy cutting down some trees. And I thought to myself, this is too much of a coincidence. I can't ignore this, because I'm thinking about this, and there is an expert across the street. Now, I'm not an expert. I didn't really want to climb on top of the house and do this work. I know I needed to do it because you don't want to have trees and limbs over your house, right, touching it. And in the winter, and especially in the fall, I could hear it, you know, touching the house. I'm like, I don't like this. So I go over, and I talk to the expert, and he comes over, gives me a bid. The next day, it's all done. Why am I telling you this? It's the concept of time. that threw me off, and it probably throws you off too. It's this illusion. It's this, I almost call it a trickster. You know, I talk a lot about misdirection. Well, I guess it's a misdirection of time. This idea that I have more time. The idea that I can do it tomorrow, or I can do it sometime in the future, that it's not really important right now. That's kind of the lie. That's the trick, that, you know, I don't have to worry about it. So you catch yourself. You catch yourself and you realize, I can't keep on pushing things to the future. I got to do things now. So one of the things that I use, which you may find to be really helpful, is a life calendar. Now, I've talked about this in the past. I'm 60 years old. Currently, today is the 23rd of July, and I think we have about 23 weeks left. Let me look at my notes. Yeah, we have 23 weeks left in this year of 2023. So today's Sunday. So every single Sunday, I fill out, blank out, darken out one of the blocks on my life calendar. Now, this isn't a calendar for January, February, March, and the months. It's not that at all. It's a calendar for every single week in a year. And if you look at it from the top, which begins at your birth, all the way to your age, like if you were 30, it would be from 0 to 30. If you're 50, it'd be from 0 to 50. So as you're looking at the chart, and the chart is pretty big, it gives you an idea of how many weeks you've already lived. So if you're 70, it's different from somebody that's 20. Like there's a big, giant difference, right? But what's interesting is that every single year, what you have left gets smaller. And I don't mean to be morbid, because it is morbid, right? The word morbid meaning death, right? Every single year, that space gets smaller and smaller. So what this does, I showed this to my sister a couple years ago at Christmas. She's like, I don't want one of those. Don't buy me one of those for Christmas. It creates, at least in me, a sense of urgency. It's like, I can't keep on putting these projects off into the future, you know? It's a lie, you know? So the first thing I want to talk about here is aiming in time, being realistic about how much time you have left. Now, if you're 20, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, if you're 20, you're in the spring of your life. You know, if you're in your 60s or 70s, you're in the fall and the winter of your life. You have to think about life a little differently. But aiming, other than, you know, talking about a target, I have a camera here. I'm going to a wedding next month. I may take my camera. And, you know, first thing you do is you point it towards, you know, who you want to take a picture of or what you want to take a picture of. And, you know, this can function as a video camera. It can also function, obviously, as a camera. But if it's going to function as a camera, I have to keep it steady, you know, really steady. And then take the picture. I can't be moving around. I'm not a professional photographer. I'm just speaking from experience. If you're going to take a picture, you really have to have it in focus. Yesterday, a friend of mine, Jason, put on a workshop, so I sat in the front and I took some pictures. I wasn't moving around. I focused on exactly what I wanted to get into the frame, and I took the picture. And I also knew, as I was at this workshop yesterday, that it wasn't going to last forever. I knew that a guy got up and spoke behind the podium or the microphone or in front of the screen. I got to get that shot. That's a great shot for social media. So there's a limitation involved with aiming. I got to get this shot now. You know, there's a sense of urgency. So I don't get anything from this. The thing is called life calendar. I think you can Google it, and I'm sure there's many of them out there. But the idea is when you get it, it's either filled in advance or you have to fill in the boxes when you get it. Hopefully you're only 20 or 30, it'll probably take you 5, 10, 15 minutes. If you're old like me, I had to put it down on the kitchen table and it took me like an hour to fill in these tiny little squares. But here's what it does for me. It gives me a reality check. Like, I just came from my office upstairs and I looked at it and I go, oh my, the year is half over. Now, we know this. If you're watching this live or you're listening to it live, it's July. You go, yeah, no kidding. I know it's half over. My point is, when you see the visual and you realize how many weeks you have lived in your life, whether you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, or 80, or whatever it is, when you see what's left, you say, you know, I really need to take that trip to Scotland. I really need to go to Israel. I really need to start saving for retirement. Hopefully you're not thinking about that in your 70s, right? The point is, the sense of urgency helps us to aim and get things done. So I don't know if you believe in God. I don't know if you believe in the universe. I don't know if you believe in synchronicity. I don't know what you believe. I'm kind of curious, but I'll tell you what I believe. When I walk outside and I'm looking at my trees and I say, I really need to do something about this, and the very next day there's a guy across the street with a crew of 5 or 10 people cutting down trees, I don't ignore that. I don't go, oh, that's a cute coincidence. That's interesting. No, I had to go over and say, listen, I have to talk to you. Come on over and take a look at my property. So my point in saying this is, you decide your metaphor for life, you decide where you are, you decide what's important, that's the I, right? And then you aim for it, just like you were to take a camera and point it. And I knew that these guys were going to give me a great price because they were across the street. He said to me, oh, we're from like 45 an hour away from you. I said, no, you're right across the street. Give me a good price, come right across the street and do the work tomorrow. And he did. Gave me a great price. So the sense of urgency, I think, is the secret to aiming. Because if you're at a party or you're anywhere, you got a camera, you got to get that shot, you got to get it now. There has to be a sense of urgency. You can't say, I'll get it tomorrow. So let's talk a little bit about categories. Now, in my line of work, I use ESP cards, and I do a little bit of performance around this. But the ESP cards are symbolic. Obviously, they don't have words on them. They're just simply symbols. So the circle is the first one. There's no beginning, there's no end. It's just simply a circle. For me, this is wholeness. This is health. This is emotional health. And most of all, it is physical health. Now, I think every single person on the planet at one time or another has to think about their health, their mental health, their emotional health, right? So when it comes to health, you can't ignore it. I mean, you can make all the money in the world. You could have millions and millions of dollars, right? If your doctor tells you this is the last year you have to be on the planet, okay, maybe you can use those millions to travel the world, or maybe you can go get alternative medicine, or you can get the best medicine in the world, because you got millions, right? But if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And, even people who are, challenged with their health, they may have life, but they can't go across the street. They can't walk. They can't go on a trip because they're in a wheelchair. Whatever it is. Health is important, and prevention. Now, I'm not a doctor, but prevention is probably better than reaction, right? So you take care of yourself. So one of the things you may want to focus on is, are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting enough water, vitamins, whatever you do? Do you go to your doctor, your weight, your blood pressure? All of those things, you aim at making that better. Because if you don't make it better, it's going to decline. Now, the second one is the X, or the cross. And to me, this is right up there with health. This is healthy relationships. These are family members, husband, wife, friends, relationship as far as boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever the relationship is. We all are not in a vacuum, right? We all need other people. We're social creatures. So how are your relationships? This is a check-in about your relationships. If you're married, how's that going? I shouldn't say this, but I will. Somebody came up to me today and they said, we're going to the court and we're going to probably get divorced. And I thought, this is sad. Maybe they'll turn it around. Maybe they won't. Prevention is important. Picking the right person, to get married to. trying to make a relationship better, aiming towards, that. I mean, hey, you could spend all the time of your life working on your career, or you could spend all the time focusing on your kids and you ignore your husband or wife or your spouse or partner, right? So relationships are important. Relationship with your boss, right? So aiming towards making that important, I think, is important. Now, my friend Paul Draper talks about bacon, but I don't see bacon here. These are 3 lines, and for me, I see currency. I see water, like row your boat. So currency for me is money. I know a lot of people have issues with money. Money is evil, rich people are evil, all of those things. Childhood conditioning around money. Remember my father saying, what do you think, money is grown on trees? You think I'm made of money? We got all of these different things in our head about money. Let's face it, unless you take a vow of poverty and join a convent or a monastery, and even those people, they need money. So everyone kind of needs money. So how are you doing with that? As far as retirement, looking at your bank accounts, looking at your credit card, your mortgage payments if you still have a mortgage, all of those things. I think retirement is really important. It's right up there for me, aiming the last, 30, 40 years of my life. So understand that time can be a great asset in this area. Like if you're listening to my voice right now, like you're listening to me or you're watching me on YouTube and you're like 20 years old, I'm going to give you some advice that's probably worth millions. And I'm not going to take a commercial. I'm going to tell you. Roth IRA. Now, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm certainly not. I'm not advising you. But if I was watching me right now I'm 60, but if I was watching myself at 20 years old or 15 years old, I remember one time I was down in Long Island and this guy came in and he was working the room and cleaning it and making sure that everything was well. And he goes, do you need anything? I said, no, I don't need anything. And I gave him my card and I gave him my download card that has a lot of my books and audios on it. And he asked me what I did and I told him. And I said, can I give you a little bit of insight, just a little bit of insight that I wish somebody had given me many years ago? He said, yeah. I said, Roth IRA. I said, you know what an IRA is? He goes, no. Do you know what a Roth IRA is? He goes, no. And I explained it to him. I says, you get to put money into this thing and 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years later, you can take the money out and you don't have to pay taxes on it because you already did. He goes, well, that sounds like a risk. And I said, you know what? It's also a risk if you don't do it. So why am I telling you a story? Time. When it comes to money, time can be working for you or it could be working against you. So I'm looking at my time. I'm going to take a commercial. I'll be right back.
You've been listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show, brought to you by motivational speaker Greg Dwyer on buildingfortunesradio.com. Do you wish you could sharpen your focus on what matters most to you and achieve more? Then you owe it to yourself to read Greg's ebook at gregdwyerebook.com. That's www.gregdwyerebook.com. Download it today and give it away. As always, we want to thank you for listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show on Building Fortunes Radio with motivational speaker Greg Dwyer. Now back to our show. Take it away, Greg.
All right, we are talking about the topic of aiming, right? So you decide where you are as far as your metaphor for life and where you are in different categories, where you currently are, and then figure out what your values are, what's important to you, and then you aim for them. And you realize that you can't keep on putting it off. Time is of the essence, really. So the next one is a square. This is the emotional. I think of a foundation of a house, right? So it's just a square. Now, just before the broadcast, we went live tonight, I was watching Mark Mason. He was doing a YouTube video about an experiment that he did with a woman that had high social anxiety. And he had 5 things that he wanted her to do over a period of 2 weeks as far as experiments, right, in social situations. First one was to desensitize herself by going up and talking to a lot of people. That was the first one. There's many of them. In fact, if you Google it or look up Mark Mason, you can probably find it. But the reason I'm telling you this story is this woman probably is in her late 20s. I don't think she's 30. She suffered her whole life with social anxiety. Somebody threw up on her at the bus. She was at a bus stop, at school. Somebody threw up on her, and for her whole life, her, teenage years, into her 20s, even into college, she suffered emotional anxiety. She started drinking to keep herself, fluid, in sense of not being anxious is what I'm looking to say. And then Mark brought her through 5 experiments to show her that she could get a different perspective, that she could change her mind. And it was amazing. I watched it like 5 minutes before we went live tonight, and it was amazing to see the transformation of a woman who was diagnosed with OCD, who was on medication, and Mark worked with her for about 2 weeks, asking her to do these simple things, very simple things. And at the end, he gave her $10,000 and broke her pattern and anchored her for a different reality and changed her mindset. So, the reason I'm talking about this is because emotions are important. If you are up and down and you are manic and you are depressed, and listen, you could have all the money in the world, you could have the best relationship of your life, but if you're not stable emotionally, and I'm not saying I am, I'm still working on it, but my point is, emotions are really important, and one way to gauge it is to take a journal every day and write down, hey, I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling depressed, and after a while you'll see a pattern. You'll see a pattern, and a lot of it is habitual. You get triggered, maybe it's the season, maybe it's a date, like, July 23rd, something happened 10 years ago, whatever it is. But you're gonna find, like me, that your emotions are pretty much habitual. And the other thing is you start to look at your emotions. Where do you live emotionally? Tony Robbins talks about this. Where do you live emotionally? And that's why I like the idea of a house or a foundation. Where do you live emotionally? Where are you? Are you in anxiety all the time? Are you in peace? Are you manic? Like, I'm manic a lot of the times. I am so focused and manic, and I love going after my goals. But there's other times I just need to breathe. I just need to stop. I need to meditate, and I need to just kind of dial down. So I want to talk a little bit about this, which is a timer, but I'm going to save that to the very, very end. So the next one is the star. The star. Now, this is your North Star. This is the way I like to think of this, the star. So those are the 5 ESP symbols. And it would be amazing if you sent me an email at greg@gregdwyer.com and I was able to tell you which was the most important. Wouldn't that be amazing? Wouldn't you be amazed by that if I said, I know you, I don't know you, but I do know you, and I think this is probably the most important thing for you right now. So your career, your passion. I went to a workshop yesterday, my friend Jason put it on, and I met this gentleman that came up to me after, and he says, you going to dinner? I said, yeah, we're all going to dinner, and he sat next to me and he goes, I do this in my life, I'm a painter, I painted houses for years. He says, but I'm really looking for passion. I'm really looking for my North Star. I love the work that I do, but I'm really looking for something that lights me up. Now, it doesn't have to be your job. Now, it could be, right? Your job's important, your career is important, but it also could be your hobby, or working with people, or doing something to give back to the community. Whatever it is, it's your calling. Maybe your 9 to 5 is not your calling, but you give it everything, you focus. You don't want to steal from the people you're working from. But then you have this side hustle on the side where, I don't know what you're doing, but that's your passion. That's your focus. So let me talk a little bit about aiming to give you a real life example. I know that you probably multitask. I do it too. I also know that multitasking is probably not that good for us. I just realized the face of the clock fell off. So what I do when I want to sit down and make phone calls, like outbound phone calls, and I believe in social media. I have a LinkedIn account, I have a YouTube account. If you go there, I hope that you'll subscribe and like it. And I like Facebook, and there's a few other things that I do on social media. But there's nothing like picking up the phone and having a conversation with 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 people in a day. There's no competition. There's very few people want to do this. Very, very, very few people want to talk to 20 people a day. I'm just telling you. And there was a time in my life that I wasn't aimed towards this. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll get to it when I can get to it, all that other stuff. But here's the secret. When I decide that making phone calls, like tomorrow afternoon, I will be making phone calls, I will shut my door. I will shut down the internet as far as like social media. I will shut down my phone. I don't want any notifications. The door is locked. In fact, right now I have a little sign on the door right now, don't disturb me kind of thing. And then I set my timer for 60 minutes. So I will literally turn it like this so that it's clicking away and I can hear it in the background. And here's the simple thing. It's really simple. All I have to do is talk to people while this thing is ticking. That's it. I don't make tea. I don't look at my social media. I don't look at emails. I don't answer the phone unless it's the police or the house is on fire and it's a fire truck outside with some firemen out there. Do you know? I am so focused. Now, I'm not saying I'm 100% perfect here. However, what I will tell you is this little gadget is a lifesaver for keeping a person focused, because you just look at it and go, I don't know if I really want to do this, but I only have 30 minutes left. I might as well. Or I only have 15 minutes left. And what's kind of cool about it is when it's over, it rings like a bell. And I got to tell you, after a while, it kind of becomes a game. So I did this last year. Last year was 2022. I had the most speaking events of my life. And the secret wasn't reading a new book or taking a new seminar or listening to some guru. It wasn't anything like that. I paid $1 for this thing, all right, at a dollar shop or a Walmart. All I did was I created a habit of turning this dial for an hour and sitting down in the chair and making phone calls. That's it. And when it went off, I got up, made some tea, went to the post office, went for a walk, came back, and if I was really excited about aiming towards the same situation, I would crank this baby again and do it again. And I gotta tell you, after doing this for a year, I love prospecting. I was talking to somebody the other day. I love sales. And they looked at me like I was insane. I said, why not? It's fun. It's better than going to a casino. I mean, some people say no, some people say maybe, some people say sure, why not? And they book. I had one guy last week, he booked me right on the spot. He decided to pay me exactly what I asked him for. And I will say that it has become a joy, but it's also an addiction because I love what I do. So wouldn't it be wonderful if you found something that you loved and when you did it, time disappeared? So I want you to think about your life. Think about your health. Think about your relationships. Think about your money. Think about your emotional life. Think about your career or your passion or your North Star, and pick something today, whether it's professional or whether it's personal, and focus on just that one thing. Don't focus on a million things. That's not going to work. Think of a camera. You're at a party or you're at an event. You only have a certain amount of time to get that photo in. And at the same time, you can't allow that opportunity to go past you. You have to aim. So I hope I gave you something to think about. I will tell you this, for most people, it is so easy to get focused. Very few people stay focused. The secret is to stay focused. Can you imagine that? All right, next week we'll talk about another letter. Glad that you're here. Please like and subscribe. I didn't do a commercial, but here's my commercial, GregDwyerEbook.com. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show. motivational speaker, Greg Dwyer, on buildingfortunesradio.com. And if you can sharpen your focus on what matters most to you and achieve more, then you owe it to yourself to read Greg's ebook at greatdwyerebook.com. That's www.greatdwyerebook.com. Download it today and give it away. As always, we want to thank you for listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show on Building Fortunes Radio. Motivational speaker, Greg Dwyer.
We are out of time.